Hey there, campers. While we're gathering around the campfire, we just want to let you know we are not what you would call experts. What we do have is a love for researching and discussing the lore of cryptids, creatures,
and an occasional spooky woman that can eat our soul.
So if you are in need of immediate help with the chupacabra in your yard, please consult someone else.
Also, this podcast isn't for kids. These campfire stories can contain graphic and explicit content that may not be suitable for young campers, so listener discretion is advised.
We haven't even started the episode, Ryan. And if you fucking buzz me this whole time, I'm gonna be so mad. Hey campers. My name is Kimmy, and I'm here with my co-host Ryan.
Hello, everybody, one and all. Welcome back to Aloreing, our folklore podcast, where we tell you the history and stories of different legends and, you might guess it from the name, lore from all around the world.
I do love doing art shows, and I do a folklore podcast, and they're like, "What's the name?" I'm like, "It's Aloreing," and the people that get the puns right away, and then versus the ones that take 3 to 4 business days, are both beautiful, beautiful reactions.
Could say the girlies that get it, get it. The ones that don't, you know?
That's it. That's it. So, what did you find? Oh, so alluring
Oh
this
boy,
week.
I have done absolutely nothing this past month except think about the fact that Magic the Gathering, which is a card game for my non-player friends, that they came out with a cowboy set, and it finally dropped. What's today? Last Friday from
Yes.
recording this, and oh boy, it's everything I hoped it would be. I'm not good at the game, so I didn't win it all, but I had a really good time. Every time it was my turn, I played like the good, the bad, the ugly theme, and I just called everyone partner. It was a good time.
That is on brand. I can't remember what your other story stuff was that day, but then you like posted that you're like, today's a great day.
Yeah,
I was
that's
like,
all that mattered that day was the fact that Magic the Gathering is coming out. And I
I
guess
I
in
s-
like
well, I saw that and I was like, oh, we're not gaming tonight. That's
no, that is all I did that day. And also, I got accepted into a master's program. I'm not going to say where, but like I'm very
um,
excited.
what can I here? This is all I got for cheering. Is
Yep,
this
that's going to be me when I
church
die
organs.
from doing a full-time job, a master's program, and a podcast. That's going to be the sound you hear.
Which means I'm going to do a lot of prep. So on the few days Ryan has sanity to do stuff, we can
Woo,
actually
woo.
record.
Yep, I promise I will still be here. I might just be a little tired on these episodes.
Send your donations, and I will give it as coffee money for
Yeah.
Ryan.
Yeah. Might need something
'Cause
stronger than that.
that's where all the moon mail funds are going to go for the next
to
three
Ryan's
3 years.
2 a.m. study sessions. But enough about me. What did you find alluring this week, Kimmy?
Oh man, well, I'm excited to see you face to face
Yeah.
very soon.
Woo.
Very soon. It's been a minute. Ryan and I we're going to
has.
go do some photos.
Heck yeah.
And I have so much weird prep stuff around my house for the photos. So I'm a little bit of a crafty chaos. I don't know. this month has been just hell. It's like I have
Yeah.
no idea what's going on. That eclipse threw me through a fucking loop.
The eclipse
My tarot,
through a loop?
yeah, and like my tarot cards just keep going, be patient, which is not in me. And I was like, just tell me a plan. And it's like, just wait. And I just can't wait for anything. So that's been super fun for me.
Okay.
It may surprise some of you guys, but the reason I'm able to have a podcast and to also work and to do freelance art is because I am insane and I schedule every second of every aspect of my life. So,
It's commendable.
yeah, it's it's impressive and terrifying all at
Mm-hmm.
once. So,
So we're very opposite in that regard. Kimmy will text me and be like, are you available at 2:05 on Monday 3 weeks from now? And I'm like, I don't fucking know, maybe. Like,
Ryan's gonna get a planner for his birthday from me, and he will never use it, is what would happen.
yeah, the amount of planners that have come and gone into my life. There's one in this backpack right here. I guess if I've opened it, the answer's no.
No.
I always fill out
okay.
the first page, and I'm really good at the first page, and then it just goes downhill from there. So
I'll show you mine. It may give you a little anxiety because that's the effect it tends to have on people, but
yeah,
it's beautiful, organized chaos. I'll just get you one with Dolly Parton on it, at least if you're going to carry it around, have an icon. You know what I mean?
yeah, exactly.
That's the way to look at it. But speaking of icons,
Great job.
oh, I'm back. I'm back. Kind of.
So back.
I'm just hydrated right now. That's really all it is. You wanna cue some of those sweet, sweet campfire sounds, and then we'll.
Oh, I sure can. We cut into the Grand Canyon of the Colorado. We don't know for sure, but folks say it's so. The greatest of lumberjacks, hero of old. I'm sure that he lives where the tales are told. And I think that was supposed to be more of a song, but I was thinking like, 50s radio announcer.
No, I liked that more. I was here
Oh.
for it.
All right. Greetings,
So,
everyone. The Grand Canyon, Colorado. Anyway,
Can
who
you-
are we? What?
can you audition to be a Fallout voice in their next
Oh,
game?
man, that'd be a dream. That should have been my... I'll talk about it next episode.
Next episode,
Yeah.
we'll come back. We'll circle
Yeah,
back.
yeah. Remind me Fallout next episode.
I'm just gonna have the note Fallout, and then 64, which is the next episode, and question mark.
Oh,
So
wow, what
destiny right
what
there.
a coincidence. Anyway, who are we talking about this week in episode 63?
This week, when roaming around Wisconsin, you'll notice that they have a thing for lumberjacks. And from statues to shop signs and even some good old tourist-themed gift shops. Now, you may be wondering why. Well, it's not for any kinky reason. It's actually the result of some famous fake lore surrounding the Wisconsin lumberjacks. From carving the Grand Canyon while dragging his axe through a snowstorm or blowing down trees just by talking too close to them, this man became an iconic folk hero during the lumber boom. So this week, we will be talking about an American folk hero, Paul Bunyan. And for all our lovely audio listeners, if you want to see this week's illustration, you can head over to our website, aloreing.com, and see it on our blog, or you can go to our Instagram at Aloreing Podcast and check it out, or you can go to our shop, aloreingshop.com, and get yourself a sticker. But I got some blue beer here for you.
Hell yeah.
Ready to partake and drink. It looks a little toxic.
No, it looks like also looks like a Fallout drink, but well, next week.
Next
Ryan.
week. Next week. Hold it. I think next week's the one episode possibly.
perfect.
So it will all come together.
Yeah.
So,
Spoilers.
but this week This week, we will be talking
This
about
week,
the
damn
American
it.
folk hero. Ryan's like, I'm so fucking close. So, this Wisconsin lumberjack was a major part of American and French Canadian folklore between the 1800s and 1900s. As the 20th century swept in and the need for lumberjacks faded as technology expanded, so did the legends of good old Paul. Though he isn't as discussed as much in modern day legends, this giant lumberjack and his trusted blue ox can still be found in a collection of pop culture media, specifically children's books. So the question is, where did the origins of this American folk hero come from? So, legends of Paul originate from oral tales and traditions of North American loggers, specifically in Wisconsin between 1880s through 1910. Stories of this mythical lumberjack were told for the purpose of entertaining and educating. The wilderness was very dangerous, so groups of veteran lumberjacks would tell new recruits, typically teenagers fresh off the farm or from the city, these tales to warn them of the dangers in the field. Some old loggers, I caught myself. Ryan, Ryan does this thing where he Jeopardy buzzes me, and it's a little PTSD for me. It is to help with my public speaking,
It's
and I'll get
working.
there. It's working. I'm
It's
so
working
scared.
really well.
I'm so scared right now. So some old loggers went as far as saying as they knew Paul from back in the day,
Mhm.
worked side by side with him, or even knew members of his logging crew. Plus, these exaggerated tales of dangerous outdoors was a great way to keep each other entertained around the fireside after a long day of work. As time went on, these tales spread amongst loggers all throughout the Midwest and even to Canada, and it wasn't long until legends would be more than just tall tales told amongst those workers. So, this is pretty fun because we have two different directions of where the origins come from. Um, so, starting off around the 1900s, there was a student at the University of Wisconsin by the name of Kay Bernice Stewart who was researching and collecting information about the history and origins of Paul Bunyan. She was the daughter of a timber cruiser and as a result spent many winters in logging camps in Wisconsin and her father hearing legendary exploits of the famous Paul. Around 1912, she began collecting all these stories of the famous folk hero believed to be inspired by a real man known to be about 7 feet tall,
Hmm.
with 7 foot wide strides, and was so powerful no man could outpower him.
7 feet tall with 7 foot wide stride. Like that's. So is he just all leg? Like,
Was this the original Fresno Nightcrawler?
oh my god. Wait a minute.
I like to think like he kind of floats as he walks. If
Yeah,
that makes sense.
he's got a stride to him, you know.
That's how he gets the stride going. He really like is very graceful about it.
Yeah.
So, though researchers were 50-50 on whether Paul was a real man or just a made up legend, they do know many lodgers had no doubt in their mind he was real. Uh, Many of the older ones would claim that they've worked for him, have been on his crew, or like we said before, they knew someone on his crew. And some even claimed that they knew the exact spot he was buried in northern Minnesota.
Hmm.
So, plus, with all the exaggerated storytelling, loggers would tell one another about their work days, it's possible that Paul's legends were just exaggerations of what actually happened. So it was believed that Paul was a real person and he was more skilled than the average worker. But because everyone's playing telephone at night around the campfire,
Yeah.
it quickly became, oh, he cut down 10 trees to he cut down 100
Yeah.
trees.
Goes from 7 feet tall to like 700 feet tall.
Yeah, it's it's like I saw him cut 10. It's like, well, I saw him cut 20. So
Yeah.
it just keeps building up. And at the same time, she was working on a collection of these stories about Paul. There was another writer that became fascinated with this folk hero. So After a freelance writer by the name of William B. Laughhead learned about the amazing story of Paul Bunyan after visiting a logging camp in 1901, he used this inspiration for his future work. So, while working for the Red River Lumber Company in 1914, he created a collection of marketing material inspired by this lumberjack icon, but it was a swing and a miss. Only lumberjacks cared about him. So, others being introduced to the lore of this great folk hero didn't mean anything to them. And
Yep.
it would be some time until non loggers would actually show interest in this iconic giant lumberjack. And I'll get more into it like way later in the notes, but it checks out why no one else cared, if that makes sense. So going to modern times, everything's changing, and it wasn't long until the career of a lumberjack faded out as tourism and technology started to replace the logging industry of the Northwoods economy during the 1920s. Paul Bunyan soon became the Wisconsin folk hero of the past, only to have his legend live on in a collection of books, stories, and films throughout the mid 2000s. So that's what I got for our little origins on good old Paul. It is now Ryan's turn. I'm gonna hand it off to him. He's gonna tell us some
Before we move to
stories.
stories, when you
Yes.
say films in the mid 2000s, I remember in like elementary school in the library, we'd always like get to watch like not always, but we'd randomly watch movies sometimes instead of read. And one time it was like a Paul Bunyan story, and I was so hyped because I was like, "Oh, this is gonna be sick." But then the movie was like just the book with like illustrations on the screen and a guy reading. I was like, "This is the worst." Like, why are we here? Like,
You're like, I didn't sign up for this.
yeah, so it was just like still images like slowly moving across the screen while like an old guy like read like the book. And I was like, this
How
sucks
old
so
were
bad.
you?
This was probably third or fourth grade.
Yeah,
Like,
that's a personal hell for
yeah, like now it wouldn't be like. I mean, I listen to podcasts obviously, and like I like reading, but back then I was like, this is the worst. I want to watch like because we'd watch like cartoons and stuff, you know, and then this was bullshit. Like,
You're like, I like to think, not knowing anything about this, like, except what you told me, that it's recorded on like a really dirty looking camera in like a really like dirty looking room, and it's some old guy
there
that's like
was
on
no
his last
camera. It
leg.
was just still images
Oh,
of like just illustrations of the book just slowly panning across the screen. It
you
sucked.
got a slideshow.
Yeah, literally, it was a slideshow with an old guy who could barely read. Anyway, let's hear some stories about Paul Bunyan. Speaking of old guy who can't read, so I hear that Paul Bunyan was born in Bangor, Maine. It took 5 storks to deliver Paul to his parents. God bless that mother. His first bed was a lumber wagon pulled by a team of horses. His father had to drive the wagon up to the top of Maine and back whenever he wanted to rock the baby to sleep.
Jeez.
As a newborn, Paul Bunyan could holler so loud he scared all the fish out of the rivers and streams. All the local frogs started wearing earmuffs so they wouldn't go deaf when Paul screamed for his breakfast. His parents had to milk 24 cows each morning and night to keep his milk bottle full, and his mother had to feed them 10 barrels of porridge every 2 hours to keep his stomach from rumbling and knocking the house down.
Oh my god.
You had it bad,
Yeah.
moms out there. At least you didn't have Paul Bunyan. Within a week of his birth, Paul Bunyan could fit into his father's clothes. After 3 weeks, Paul rolled around so much during his naps that he destroyed 4 square miles of prime timberland. His parents were at their wits' end, rightfully so.
Respectfully, yeah.
They decided to build him a raft and floated off the coast of Maine. When Paul turned over, it caused 75-foot tidal waves in the Bay of Fundy. They had to send the British Navy over to Maine to wake him up. The sailors fired cannons and they had a fleet for 7 hours straight before Paul Bunyan woke from his nap. When he stepped off the raft, Paul accidentally sank 4 warships, and he had to scramble around scooping sailors out of the water before they drowned. So after that, Paul's parents decided there's just not enough room in the East, and they moved to Minnesota.
I like that was the line, was the sinking of the British ships.
Yeah, they're like, all right, we got to go. The king's going to come after us.
Well, it's fine. Then your baby could just roll over the king. You know?
Honestly, yeah. What's the king going to do? Paul Bunyan cries and friggin'...
There were 2 completely different directions the parents could have taken this.
Yeah.
And they chose the peaceful one?
Yeah. No, they could have... Yeah. They could have conquered the earth. Instead, They moved to Minnesota. So...
They could have stopped so much colonization.
Yeah.
If
Teach
they
their
were
own.
evil.
Fortunately, by the time Paul Bunyan was born, I think it may have been a little late for that. But, they probably could have solved some issues. Anyway.
Just roll over the whole planet, start again.
Yeah, start over. Yeah.
Just nice reset, clean sweep, restart the island, You're
in the image of Paul Bunyan. Maybe that's what happened. Have you considered that? Maybe every religion is wrong, and Paul Bunyan is actually the Big Bang. That was Paul. That was Paul dropping out of his mama.
That was the role of Paul Bunyan.
Yeah. Well, I know what cult I'm gonna start. Anyway,
you'll be able to get really far with it. That's the scary thing.
Did you know Paul Bunyan also tamed the Whistling River? So, the Whistling River, so named because twice a day it reared up to a height of 200 feet and let loose a whistle that could be heard over 600 miles away. It was one of the most ornery rivers of the USA, and it took a fiendish delight in plaguing the life out of the loggers who worked it. It would tie their logs into knots, flip men into the water, and toss them into the banks, and break apart whole rafts of logs as soon as the loggers put them together. Right. So, this fact by itself might not have been enough by itself to get Paul Bunyan involved, but one day Paul was sitting on a hill by the river, combing his beard with a large pine tree, when without warning the river reared up and spat 419 gallons of muddy water into his beard.
Gross.
Paul didn't like this very much. But he figured if he ignored the river, it would go away and leave him alone. But that ornery river just reared up again and spat 5,019 gallons of muddy water into his beard. What an oddly specific amount of water. Adding a batch of mud, turtles, fish, muskrats. Paul Bunyan was pissed off, and he let out a yell that caused a landslide all the way out into the Pikes Peak. Oh, that's like the coffee. By Jingo, I'm going to tame that river or bust a gut trying, he cried. So, Paul sat for 4 days eating popcorn and trying to figure out how to tame that river. He ate so much popcorn that the air was filled with white bits and ground for 3 miles. Around was covered with 18 inches of popcorn scraps. This caused several hundred small animals and a few dozen birds to conclude that there was a blizzard. So they froze to death. This furnished the loggers at the camp with pot pies for several days. So they thought it was a blizzard and froze to death, but it wasn't actually a blizzard. Yes. They're just like, it's cold. I guess I'm dead.
Anything for that workers' comp, am I right?
Yeah. Amen. Just as he ran out of popcorn, Paul decided that the way to tame the river was to pull out the kinks. He would hitch... different type of kinks, Kimmy. He would hitch the river to Babe the Blue Ox and let him yank it straight. Nice.
Nice. Okay. Oh, sorry. Yeah. I can't read the room, apparently.
Of course.
Don't when I can.
Of course, Paul knew that an ordinary log chain and skid hook wouldn't work with this water. So he and Babe took a short walk up to the North Pole. Short walk. There, Paul made a box trap baited with icicles. that he set near a blizzard trail. Then he and Babe wandered away. Paul started to throw icebergs out into the ocean so Babe could play fetch. But he had to stop the game since each time Babe jumped into the water, a tidal wave threatened to swamp the coast of Florida. From what? That geography doesn't make a lot of sense, but we're talking Paul Bunyan. Who cares?
Yeah, I can tell this is the time of period where Europe was the middle of the map.
Yeah.
And it was a flat earth situation kind of thing.
But so after lunch, Paul went back to check the trap. He had caught 6 young blizzards, a whole blizzard?
6 young blizzards, Ryan.
He went and put 2 of the blizzards in a sack and released the rest, and Babe went back to their camp. So as he walked into camp, Paul yelled Ole and Big Swede to build him the largest log chain he'd ever seen. Then he staked out the 2 blizzards, one on each side of the river. Right away, the river began to freeze. By morning, the river had a tough time rearing up to the whistle because it was frozen solid for more than 17 miles. When Paul Bunyan finished his breakfast, he harnessed Babe and wrapped the chain 72 times around the foot of the frozen Whistle River, yelling to the men to stand clear. He shouted at Babe to pull. Babe pulled the chain into a solid bar and sank knee-deep into the solid rock, but the ornery river refused to budge, and they tracked it across the prairie so fast it smoked. After a while, Paul looked back and saw a river was straight as a gun barrel. But the river was much shorter with the kinks out, and all the extra length that had been used in the kinks were running wild out into the prairie. Nice. So Paul got his big crosscut saw and a lot of baling wire and sawed the extra length of the river into 9-mile pieces, rolled them up, and tied them with ball wiring. He later used them to float the logs when he logged out in the desert. But now that it was straight, the whistling river lost its gimp and refused to whistle, which made everyone mad at Paul Bunyan because now they didn't know when to wake up in the morning. Paul might have been in real trouble if Squeaky Swanson hadn't showed up right about then. Squeaky's squeaky speaking voice was no louder than a whisper, but when he yelled, you could hear him clean out in Kansas. So each morning, Squeaky got up at the creek of dawn and yelled the blankets off of every bed in camp. Naturally, the men found it hard to sleep in the cold without their blankets, so they got up. Squeaky was a great success, and for the rest of his life, he did nothing but get up at dawn and let out a really loud yell. Same on my way to work every day.
What? I feel like, after hearing those two, I feel like this was their version of D&D at the time.
Yeah.
Like, Paul Bunyan was their fantasy figure that instead of them making their own D&D characters and their own classes and stuff, they just took Paul Bunyan and built off of it.
All right, Paul, you're going to do a strength check to move a river. Please, so let's get a strength saving throw. Natural 20. All right, you freeze the whole river and pull it across the plains.
It's a DM that decided that 20 is always a success
and
and
no matter
1
what.
is always a fail, and realized the mistake halfway through the campaign.
And Paul had a loaded dice.
It only had 20s on it.
Yeah.
That's all that was on his dice. Okay, let's oh, do you have anything to say about those stories?
No, I think those are pretty self-explanatory. I mean, everything that I just said actually happened, so not much to talk about.
That's it. That's all that's been said has been said. So I want to do those radio sounds, and we'll hear a quick word from our sponsors.
Beep. And we're the sponsor.
For all our video listeners, check out the stickers we got in shop. Look at that. Look at those stickers.
Wow.
Stick it.
You can stick those bad boys on whatever you want. All right. Stick them on yourself.
Consensually.
Stick them on your significant other. Stick them anywhere legally.
A lot of people have been putting things in the Mothman butt statue.
Yeah.
Here's another place.
Oh, that'd be cool.
You could stick it
Just right
tramp
in
stamp
there.
style.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's all we got. Check out the shop. Let's head back. Whoa! All right. Welcome back, campers. We hope you enjoyed that little break. We are apparently like rivers froze on that break. Like giant mountains were suddenly formed. It was pretty
Yeah, a
wild.
tidal wave hit Florida from the North Pole for some reason.
Earthquake happened in New York.
Yeah, and missed the rest of the East Coast. Hit the South. Crazy.
So let's talk about the appearance and some fun things surrounding good old Paul. So since birth, he has always been a big boy. And like Ryan said earlier, it took 5 giant storks to deliver Paul to his parents. And when you said that poor mother, I cackled because my notes say condolences to his mother. Because I would be like, nah, I'm done. I've done everything I can at this point. And the boy didn't stop growing then. He grew into a powerful giant, 7 feet tall, with a stride of 7 feet. So, sorry, I wrote that weird. I said 7 feet tall, which is just a tall guy. He grew like a giant dude. And for some reason, the giant version of him, I couldn't find an actual height, but I have the person height, so that's the
He had a
confusion.
stride of 7 feet, which would be a very tall person.
So what? So do the math.
Yeah,
calculus, you know that thing where you
statistics.
Yeah, where it's like
geometry.
The pool's this long.
Yeah,
the shadow's this long. How tall is the pool? Whatever.
Someone who's not a podcaster figure that out.
Yeah, we got. There's got to be one nerd that's listening. That's like, that sounds like a fun challenge. He had dark black hair, a full black beard, and a charming smile. He was also known to sport the iconic flannel button-up, suspenders, work jeans, work boots, and a giant axe.
Nice.
This good-looking lumber hunk was also known for his great physical strength. He was apparently so strong, he single-handedly carved the Grand Canyon while dragging his axe through a snowstorm. His lung capacity was so great that when he would call his men to dinner, he'd accidentally blow through a hollow tree, and when he spoke, limbs would sometimes fall off the trees. And he could easily outdrink any man. So, the holy trinity of physical traits, as I like to say. And on top of being charming and strong, if that wasn't enough to make you take a seat, well, you're going to now, because he was known to have a great personality. Paul cared greatly for the lumberjacks who worked under him and would go out of his way to make sure they were okay, keep them safe, and even rescue them from dangerous situations. I didn't put it in this episode, but we did, like, in the episode notes. But the Hide Behind episode we did and the Squonk episode we did, we go into the history of how dangerous being a lumberjack was.
Yeah.
And how scary it was.
I think it's still one of the most like deadly jobs. It's up there.
Yeah. I think it's like that and like crab fishing or something.
Yeah.
There's some intense jobs out there. Like, kudos, y'all. So you can go check those out if you want to learn more about logging history, which is pretty fun. Anyway, Paul was also known to be very clever and could find unique solutions to problems the average logger couldn't solve. Logger couldn't solve. I had the beep go in my head. Raz was stressing me out with that Jeopardy sound, I tell you what. The only known flaw of Paul's was that he couldn't write, and was known to keep track of men's hours by making notches on a piece of wood and drawing the supplies he needed to order for him and his men. But not having the skill to write backfired quite a bit. So the first instance I'll tell you is Paul accidentally ordered a bunch of cheese wheels instead of grindstones due to poor illustration details. So,
At least they weren't hungry.
that's exactly what the story said. It's like, at least they were well fed and they had cheese for the rest of the season. The next story tells of how Paul wasn't the best accountant because you can't have everything, is what we're learning today. So at the end of one season, so that's like how long they would like go out and chop wood and then come back
Mm-hmm.
typically. So Paul realized he had no money on hand to pay his men. So instead of owning up to his mistake, like a true American, he suddenly rushed into camp, shouting that they had been cutting government pine and were all to be arrested.
Oh,
So
Paul.
So instead of the men asking about getting paid, they panicked because it was illegal to cut government pine. And every man grabbed whatever camp property they could get their hands on and scattered. No two men taking the same direction.
That's fucked up.
Paul then cleared his camp without paying any of his men a cent for their labor.
Jeez. Well, I'd like to change my alignment chart on Paul. That's pretty fucked.
I had a similar situation like that actually happened to me at my first job.
Seriously?
Yeah, did I ever tell you when I was 14, my parents are like, "You gotta work." I was like, "I'm 14, but okay." And I got a job down the street. It was like a boutique shop slash photography place.
Mm-hmm.
And apparently my boss was a con artist, and her and her
Oh.
friend like would physically like change their like identity and stuff,
Oh my goodness.
and they would like open shops, and then whenever they were going to get caught they would like run to the reservation because like one of
Wow.
them was like part like Native American,
Yeah.
and she like scammed. It was me, and it was like four of my like friends by proximity situation because it's
Yeah.
like junior high, you know.
Yeah.
And we all worked there, and she like didn't pay like all of us for like a month, and apparently like she did it to like two girls before, and she would like use her kid to try to get out of pain. But like I was persistent where I'm like, I'm getting my money.
Yeah.
Like,
Wow.
and we didn't know until one day we came, like she was like calling us because my dad was like, well, take them to court. And I was like, sounds great, you know. So
Yeah.
we served them. And I remember we went into work one day, and there was like new people working there, and we thought they were working for her. And it was this lady that was like, "Oh, like I'm running the boutique now. Can you guys help?" And we're like, "Yeah, sure." And then we helped and everything, thinking we would get paid for it. And they're like, "Oh, you're not working under us,
What?
and you don't have a job anymore."
Oh,
So
that's
pay your
crazy.
workers.
Yeah. And they just
'Cause
disappeared?
yeah, she changed her identity again, and she went to like the from what I heard, she went to the reservation, and it
Oh,
was just
wow.
yeah.
That was actually Paul Bunyan.
Yeah, so it was my first boss was actually Paul.
It's crazy.
God damn. Anyway, that's sorry. I know that was a complete tangent, but I had to tell you that story because I thought I told you that story. Don't have your 14-year-olds work is should be
That's
the
the moral of
moral.
that story.
Wait till they're at least 16. Let them be a child for a minute. God damn it. Okay. Anyway, so now on to some fun facts. I want to tell you all about his lovely companion. So, another iconic factor about good old Paul was his trusty steed, Babe. So, legends tell of how Paul found a baby ox frozen blue outside in the snow during the coldest winter in Minnesota, known as the Winter of the Blue Snow. Liking the animal's spunk, he rescued the cutie and took it back home. After he warmed up the ox, the blue color didn't fade, and Paul called him Babe the Blue Ox. Sorry, I'm like thirsty, so I want to take a drink real quick. Okay. Much like Paul, Babe grew so fast it wasn't long until he stood as a giant ox and helped Paul on his day to day jobs, such as hauling the huge camp tank wagon used to pave the winter lodging roads with ice. And he would do other things, like he was always pulling the men's supplies and helping around the campsite. So Babe even created the 10,000 Lakes of Minnesota.
Wow.
Both Babe and Paul's footsteps created impressions in the land that filled with rainwater, forming lakes throughout the state. Hence why Lake Irvine is shaped like the heel, and Lake Benji is shaped like the top of Paul's boot. Um, Other things about Babe is it took a crow a day to fly from one of Babe's horn tips to the other, and he eats about 30 bales of hay, wires and all, in a day. So, big boy, they had to feed him a lot, but Paul loved having the cutie around, and it helped him a lot with his work.
I feel like Paul and Babe alone would like just wreck the world, like food. Like there would not be enough food in the world to keep those
No.
two alive.
No.
Which may be why
No.
he didn't live too long.
Right. I was like, maybe because he grew up so big so fast, like he couldn't live that long either, if
Yeah.
that makes sense. But also a thing to think about too is like with how much resources both of them needed to use as a person is how the lumber industry just kind of deforested. Am I saying that right? Deforested?
Deforest.
Like
Deforestation, something like
yes.
that. Yeah.
Yes, I was like, deforested does not sound right, but the idea is there.
They cut down a lot of forests.
There was not a lot of wood left, so like them cleaning through it so quickly kind of makes sense.
One
at the
foul
same time.
swoop.
Yeah,
Why did
Just
he
one
even have employees? Like,
because you know that's a great question. It all circles back. So, Paul Bunyan is an American legend, and nothing says America more than a good old marketing campaign. So, we are going to dive deep into the details of the marketing campaign William, who we talked about earlier, used for the Red River Lumber Company. So, feeling inspired, William took his legend and created a collection of marketing materials. He introduced a cartoon stylized giant man by the name of Mr. Bunyan of Westwood, California. From postcards, flyers, and even oral tales written in an advertisement language with illustrations, William had what seemed to be the perfect marketing campaign to send over to some California business partners. But there was a tiny problem. His business partners had no idea who the hell Paul Bunyan was. Only loggers knew about this famous folk hero, and surprise, surprise, the businessmen were so disconnected from the work actually done on the field, they've never heard of the man. So we got some good old class separation happening right now. William realized this and said the following after the campaign had a complete flop. There were even a lot of people in the logging business who had never heard of Paul Bunyan. When it got to the wholesaler and the lumber dealer and the manufacturer who was buying the lumber for the factory's purposes, they didn't know anything about Paul, and there were all types of confusion. But this wasn't the end of old William's marketing ideas. The next campaign, they pushed this folklore hero's image more, and Paul became the new face and logo of Red River Logging Company. And they even started selling a type of wood called Paul Bunyan pines. They even printed new pamphlets with more stories of Paul to help promote the stories and the lore of the Wisconsin hero. So instead of taking the L, they were like, we're going to fight
Double
it.
down. I love it.
But this was nothing more than a swing and a miss. These business partners just didn't care about the lumberjacks lore because honestly, it didn't have anything to do with them. Looking back now, we can acknowledge it for actually being a really great campaign that was ahead of its time. But it's people just like now in today's day and age, this campaign would do very well
Mm-hmm.
because we're so connected, we get information so quickly, and people love to get the lore of whatever creature or character is posted. But back then they couldn't care less. So it just flopped.
The power glove of his generation.
Yeah.
No one understood.
Um, and then I had no other way to work this in, but I said, you know what else the working cast does like to do? They like to drink.
Hell yeah, brother.
Here's a picture of a Paul Bunyan beer
Nice.
from the 1950s that is being sold currently in auction from anywhere from $500 to $2,000.
Wow, so they don't make it anymore?
They don't make it anymore,
Damn. Should bring it
which
back.
they should.
Yeah.
Just missed opportunities all
Oh.
around. And I'm so curious what it would taste like. I feel like it would have some pine aftertaste in it.
It tastes like Bud Light that was left out in the sun a little too long.
That checks out. But anyway, get your hands on some Paul Bunyan beer. It's probably not
Yeah, only $2,000.
good. Yeah. Know how the lumberjacks felt at the time. All right. So my last thing is, speaking of good old William, through his marketing campaigns at being an absolute flop at the time, his interpretation of Paul would leave a major impact on the American folklore community. So, with all these retellings and embellished stories of good old Paul, they weren't considered folklore anymore. This was the start of a new term to describe these tales, which was fake lore. Fake lore is known as a literary. God damn it, Ryan! I had it that time. The edited version people are listening to now. I tried 2 times before that, and I cut it out, and now here I am. Fake lore is known as a literary invention, haha, that has been passed off as an older folk tale. Paul Bunyan's legend was a great example of this since it was composed almost entirely of tall tales with no actual basis in folklore. And with these false legends growing as tall as Paul Bunyan himself, people turned to William's creative spin on him instead of the original person who was the inspiration for this fictional folk hero, which is just pretty cool.
Yeah.
So, fun. That's all the fun stuff of Paul. There's some stuff I definitely glossed over because of time and history is icky, and yeah. So we're gonna transition with some modern takes with Ryan this week.
All right.
There we go.
So
There we go.
now, Kimmy had challenged me to think of this generation's Paul Bunyan. I don't think this generation currently has a Paul Bunyan, but old millennials have a Paul Bunyan. And before I say who it was, do you know why Bigfoot's still hiding, Kimmy?
Why is Bigfoot still hiding, Ryan?
Bigfoot's still hiding because he once saw Chuck Norris walk in the mountains. That's right, everybody. I don't want to say this generation. I was like the tail end of Chuck Norris. I was just getting old enough. But early 2000s, Chuck Norris was the Paul Bunyan. There were anything in the world, people would say Chuck Norris did it. When Chuck Norris plays dodgeball, the balls dodge him. Did you know that?
I feel like you just accessed like a part of my 13-year-old brain. I don't know how I feel.
Yeah, and did you know Chuck Norris had a diary, and it's called the Guinness Book of World Records?
Oh my god. How many of these do you have, Ryan?
I mean, there's thousands of them. Chuck Norris has done everything. Chuck Norris does not get frostbite. Chuck Norris bites frost. So I'd say it's about equivalent to Paul Bunyan, and maybe in like a couple hundred years when people don't actually know who Chuck Norris is, maybe, just maybe, there'll be a mid-sized podcast talking about Chuck Norris like he was a real guy.
Yeah. No, I'll let you have that because
Hmm.
I do agree. I don't feel like there's a Chuck Norris in this
Yeah. No, not anymore.
generation.
My original one
No.
was gonna be James Cameron, because the director of Avatar and Titanic, because James Cameron has he started making movies, but now he's like gone into the Marinara Trench. He's been in space. He visited the real Titanic. The man's done everything, and I feel like there might be
Best
some folklore about him one day.
best part.
Hmm.
I just Googled him to see his face. He is exactly 69 years old from when we're recording.
Nice,
Nice. So,
nice.
um, I don't know. Maybe I'll make that the little Spotify quiz. Who is the Chuck Norris
Yeah.
of this generation? I would like to say that it's the Sonic movies bullied version.
The Sonic with teeth.
Yes.
Nice. I like that.
that's 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 what this generation gets.
Um,
That's it. Just feels right. He's fast as fuck. It just makes sense to me. Um, that was modern takes with Ryan. Let's wait. Is this the right sound? No.
woo.
I don't.
Yeah. There comes Alien.
Woo!
Woo.
That's
Anyway.
a long UFO sound.
Yeah.
I may have to work on
It
that.
lasted the length of the GIF. We don't have announcements today, right? So let's get straight
Yeah.
to
Do you want to
our...
hear the dog sound anyway?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. This is for
Yeah.
you, Ryan.
That's
There you
fucking
go.
beautiful. All right.
Ryan says
I
I'm
would
a
like
furry.
to change my alignment. Because
Is
after
it?
hearing about all the things Chuck Norris has done, I don't think he's lawful or good. I think he is in fact chaotic neutral. Um, the man deforested most of America. He didn't pay his employees. Instead, he told them all they were going to be arrested.
Okay.
I don't see what's lawful about him at all.
Well, to counter that, because right at this moment in time, it says Ryan and I are both between lawful good. He
Yeah.
is quite an attractive man, and college Kimmy had a thing for
Okay,
lumberjacks.
look. You
So
could. That doesn't mean he's lawful. You could put him in chaotic good. There's
I,
nothing lawful about this man.
I agree with you. I would keep him in good, but I
Yeah.
would definitely put him more towards chaotic.
Yeah.
100%.
He just kind of does whatever he wants.
Yeah,
And who's
he
going to
kinda-
stop him? He's 4,000 feet tall.
That's a fair point.
Yeah.
You're not going to ask your boss for a raise if they could flick you
Yeah.
off the face of the planet.
The fact
you
that
know?
you have a job right now is because he chose to give you a job. The man could clear the entire United States forest in one foul swoop. But instead he employed you to cut logs down for some reason.
I wonder if this is how ants feel. You know those little ant farms you'll buy? I wonder
Probably.
if it's. I wonder
They
if
probably
this is
think the same thing that I said is like, how is this massive giant sustaining itself? Like, there's not enough stuff in the world for it. Well, do they
It's
know?
like the raindrops pulverize us. How is he surviving?
Maybe, do you ever consider maybe we're the ants in Paul Bunyan's
Yeah.
ant jar? That's going to be the other part of my cult. Paul Bunyan still exists. He just hasn't checked on our anthill in a while.
It's called.
Was one of us.
The cult members are called AOA, and it's Ants of America.
Or lodgers.
Lodgers. Jesus Christ. If you guys see a cult for that popping up, just know
Make sure you join
we
it.
may.
It's probably pretty. I heard the guy in charge is pretty sick. But it's just a rumor I heard.
Just remember,
Yeah.
donate all your money, become an
Yeah.
ant of
Yeah,
America,
Ants of America.
and make the loggers proud.
Mm.
All right, let's. I don't have anything else. This was a fun one, but
Yeah.
everything that's been said could be said. What's your takeaway about good old Paul?
Um. Hmm. Hmm. Chuck Norris knows Victoria's Secret.
um, hmm. Well, I don't know what to say to that. Um, hmm. Bless Paul's mother will be
Yeah. Oh man.
will be
She
my
was never the
takeaway.
same after that. All right.
I I don't blame her. Oh man, a poor girl. Okay, so that's it. We're done.
Yeah.
Thanks everyone. That's our takeaways. Appreciate you listening to the podcast. Uh,
Chuck Norris started a podcast once, and it was called Aloreing Podcast. All right. Bye.
bye.